Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of AWS Tech Tales. I'm your host, Matt Burke. Samara is out today, so we have our lovely guest, Ria. Why don't you introduce yourself, Ria?
Hey everyone, I'm Ria. I'm a technical account manager at AWS. I've been here 2 years now, and I was on Tech Tales back in September, back when Kiro was in public preview, and it was so fun. And I'm so excited to be back here today. So today we're going to be talking about Claude Code on Bedrock.
Yeah, Ria, thanks for joining us. So, folks, if this is your first time, hey, James Butler, thanks for joining us over on YouTube. Tech Tales is the show where we talk about real life customer issues and what you can do to solve them. And we've been going on quite a journey in the past few weeks talking about multi agent orchestration, talking about building different AI functions. We've been playing around with Kiro after Ria showed us in public preview. We played around with what that looked like at GA, and we played around with security agent. And for our last episode of the season, oh, Yurietta said that you inspired him to try Kiro, which is awesome.
Awesome.
A little hottie, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And so today, there's been a couple of exciting announcements since the last time Ria's joined us. One of them has obviously been that you can run Claude platform on AWS. So you can run Claude kind of a first party, but you can also run, and you've been able to run for a while now, Claude. Oh my God. I feel like I'm going to be stumbling over saying Claude Code 5 times fast. You can run Claude Code on Bedrock. So I feel like Claude Code has been uh, the biggest talk of the town over the past 6 to 8 months, and it's we only just got access to it actually at Amazon recently. But yeah, so Ria, what if you had to compare Claude Code to Kiro? What are the trade-offs? What are the things you like more, and what are the things you like Kiro more for?
Yeah, I think the main difference between Kiro and Claude Code is that Kiro is an agentic IDE, right? So everything is within that IDE, whereas Claude Code is terminal native. So you're going to be running most of the things in the terminal. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the different slash commands that we have in Claude Code, and some of the benefits of running it on Bedrock versus directly through Anthropic. And so, yeah, we have a lot of stuff to cover today, and it's going to be a great episode.
So, folks, if you've got any questions about Claude Code, or if you're using Claude Code today, please let us know in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'll bring it up on the screen, and we'll try to answer any questions. Before we get to your demo, Ria, I know there was a bunch of fun, or I guess new feature things that came out around New York Summit the other week. Is there anything in particular you think that the audience should check out or take a look at?
I think the announcement that stood out the most to me was probably AWS Continuum. Not only because it has a super cool name, but also because it's agentic and it's looking for different security vulnerabilities and different things. So I'm curious to learn more about it, and what sets it apart from the security agent that we learned about a little while ago.
Yeah, I feel like now security agent is under this umbrella of Continuum, and I haven't really had a chance to dig in in that new preview of how it all fits together. But we had a lot of fun on the show. You can check out, maybe I should bring it on the screen. If you're looking for any of our past episodes, if you just go to awstechtails.com, that'll bring you to our show page, which has been updated to the latest and greatest episodes. And so if we take a look, we can go back down to our security agent episode, starting with AWS security agent right here. And you can take a look at what we built, Samara and I.
Awesome.
But with that, should we just kind of get right? I know you've got a lot to cover. We can get right to the demo. And Victor, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us today. I will, if you're ready for it, I'll bring up your screen.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. Today we're going to be talking about Claude Code on Bedrock. And Claude Code is Anthropic's agentic coding tool. And we're going to be talking about running it on Bedrock. So when you run this on Bedrock, you also have the benefits of having everything run within your AWS account. And it also means that you have access to some of the familiar stuff like IAM for authentication. You could also like integrate with Identity Center for IDP. You could also do centralized billing, which is another benefit of running this on Bedrock. So your Claude Code bill will also be part of your AWS bill.
Yeah, and we're going to take a very quick step back
Okay.
because Colchis has a question, which is just, what is Bedrock? Which thank you for asking before we got too deep in.
Yeah, so Bedrock is our AWS service that allows you to invoke foundation models. So it's very easy. You can do it with a simple command. And we have a whole variety of different foundation models. Actually, let me pull up the Amazon Bedrock page because this is a pretty important thing that we would want to know.
And now pretty much any model you can think of is on Bedrock, including the
Yeah.
latest models from OpenAI. We've got Claude. I think we have Llama. We pretty much, if you can think about it, it's on there, or it might be on there soon.
Yep. Let's see if this will open up the models that we have. Okay. Yeah, we have different models on Amazon Bedrock. Since I'm in a lab account, it might not let me see this. But we do have different ones from Claude, from OpenAI, DeepSeek, you name it. And we're always adding more models to this as well. So basically, when we're running Claude Code on Bedrock, it means that all of our inference to the actual Claude model is going to be going through Bedrock, the Bedrock API, instead of the Anthropic Direct API. So that's why all of the billing is going to be within your AWS account. So I think when we go through our demo today, it'll make a bit more sense. But yeah, hope that answered the question.
So Ria, before you get too deep in, just give our audience like a quick like 5,000-foot view of what you're gonna do today with Claude Code.
Okay. Yeah, so today first, we are going to set up Claude Code on Bedrock. So right here, I have our VS Code server, and I have AWS CLI set up here, so I'm logged in with my AWS account. So we're going to go through together how we can set this up to begin with, so that it's super simple. Once you see this, you're going to be like, I can get started right away. And then once we do that, we're going to, look through some of the different features that we can do. How can we interact with this to like build a simple application? How can we create skills? Just exploring different stuff within Claude Code that you might be hearing about as, you're hearing about Claude and Claude Code. Some of those files, some of those key things, those are the things that we're going to be looking at today. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll have kind of that foundational understanding of Claude Code, and you will feel ready to go about and test this out on your own.
Two more quick comments, and then we'll get straight to it. And also, Ria, let me ask you to like zoom in a little bit more just to make it a bit bigger. But Colkit says, this is very cool. I'll have to try out Bedrock at some point. And this is a great way for me to tell you that the AWS free tier, if you set up a new account, you get up to $200 in credits, and Bedrock is covered. So if you want a free way to try this out, just use an email that you've never used before with AWS and start up an account. And James Butler says, is an AWS Cloud API call more expensive? I think for that, we'd have to direct you to our pricing page, and you'd have to compare those directly because the prices will always change, especially given each model as well. Cool.
Okay, so let's get started. So the very first thing that we're going to do is going to be setting up Claude Code in Bedrock. So I have some of my commands pre-typed out, so you guys don't have to see me type through this. But essentially what we're going to do first is we're going to create a new folder. And this is going to be our Claude folder. And then within that, we're going to create a new file, which is going to be called settings.json. And then essentially here is where we're going to set up our Claude Code. And we're going to add the following configuration into our file. So I'm going to quickly save this. And then this is actually pretty interesting. So let's actually go through what this configuration file has. So the very first thing that we have is our model. And you can see here that instead of defining a specific like model version and ID, I've instead given it a model alias. So I have Opus Plan. And how this works is actually pretty neat. So instead of tying to a very specific model, like one specific Opus model, what this does is it's going to dynamically switch between Opus and Sonnet. And how that works is, say you're doing something that is, that has a lot of planning, right? Lots of complex reasoning. For that, you would want to use an Opus model. But say, for example, you want to do something like a code completion or, something very quick, it's going to use Sonnet because Sonnet is more fast and efficient. So based on exactly what you're trying to do, with this model alias, it's going to switch between whether you're using an Opus model or a Sonnet model, depending on which one works better. And then if we look down here at the bottom, I've also specified specific model IDs. Like I pinned these to our defaults for Sonnet, Opus, and Haiku. And essentially the reason for doing this is, Anthropic is always releasing like newer models. And in case you want everyone on your team to be using the same model version, regardless of, what might be the newest, you can always pin it to a very specific model. So you'll always continue using this one, even if there's a newer version. So that's essentially what these parts of this file are going to be doing. And then here is where we're actually configuring it to use Bedrock. And then since we're using Bedrock, we also need to specify our AWS region. And another note here is that, since we're routing this through Bedrock, you also want to double check that these model versions that you picked out are available within the region that you picked out as well. Okay, so that is our settings file. I'm going to take a quick pause and see if there are any questions on that.
No, I think it was pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Chat's gone quiet.
Awesome. Another thing you could add within the settings file, so we're going to keep it pretty simple and just leave it at this. But say you're hitting like rate limiting issues and you want to also limit like how many output tokens that the model can output. You can also set those configurations in here as well. You could be like max output tokens or max thinking tokens. And you can specify those as well so that every time Claude is going to be generating responses, it's going to make sure to stay within those limits.
We actually have an interesting question from James Butler saying, is Amazon Q not there now? Is Bedrock its a successor? And that's a little bit of a complicated question because Amazon Q is your assistant within the console. We use Q for things like AWS, Amazon Q Developer, things like that. Bedrock is not the successor for Q. Bedrock is literally how you get through API foundation model. So Q itself isn't a model. Q is the service.
Yep. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to actually, start up Claude within our terminal. And how we do this is super, super simple. All you have to do is type in Claude, and then this is going to open up our Claude terminal interface. So since this is the very first time that I've opened up Claude, it's going to ask me some initial setup type of questions. So things like, what terminal style do I want? What do I want as my greeting? So I'm going to leave all of this as the default. And it's also going to have me acknowledge that Claude is, at the end of the day, AI. And we want to, review all of this and know that it can make mistakes because it's Gen AI and it can hallucinate. So I'm going to acknowledge all of these and say enter. And I'm also going to go with the recommended settings for the terminal setup. And then I'm finally going to say that I trust this folder, and we are within our Claude terminal interface. So the very first thing that we want to do is we want to verify that these settings that we just set up here in our settings.json have actually applied. So how we do that is we're going to do /status. So you can see as I'm typing here that we have lots of different options that come up as I'm typing the slash, and then I start typing in letters. And we're going to be going through a lot of these today, but this is essentially how you work within the Claude terminal interface. So what we're going to be doing first is we're going to do slash status, and this is going to show us our settings for our Claude code. So the key thing that we want to verify here is API provider. So we can see here that our API provider is Amazon Bedrock, which means that we are running Claude Code on Bedrock. And we also want to verify that our region is the one that we picked it up to be. So this is how we verify our settings over here. And another thing is that you can apply these settings at different levels within your project as well. So right now we have it at the project level. You could also have different settings, like say at a user level. So say when I'm working on projects, I prefer to use a specific model, like I like using Sonnet 4.6. And I always want to use that. I can set that at my user level so that every time I work, it's going to use that. I can also specify region. You can also set these settings at a managed level as well. So say you're working in an organization and they only want you to be able to run inference in a specific region, like US East 1, for example. So those settings will be applied at that managed level, and everyone who's within that organization will be following those kind of organizational level settings as well. Okay. So that is what I wanted to show here. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at is going to be cost. So when you're working with Claude Code, you might be wondering, what is my usage looking like? Like how much am I incurring for all of these different questions and tasks that I'm having it do? And there's a very simple way that you can see how much cost you've racked up, and that is just by doing /cost. So if you do this, obviously so far we haven't really run anything, so it's going to be 0 at this moment. But as you continue working with Claude, you'll be able to see the different costs, and you can also see some more information like how long you've been using Claude Code for, how many lines did you add, how many did you remove, and you can also see information on like your token usage. So you can see how many input tokens you had, how many output tokens, and how many of those were also cached, right? So you can see all of this information here. And when we're talking about cost, there's also like other things you can do since you're within the AWS environment. You could also set up budgets with AWS budgets. And the way that you do that is going to be super simple. You just go to your console, AWS budgets, and you can set up like different thresholds. Say I want like $100 budget for my month, right? So I could set that up with AWS budgets. And I could also set up like email alerts. So say I reach like 80% of that budget and I want to get an email alert. So those are all things that you get extra since you're working within your AWS environment.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add on budgets is that folks don't necessarily know that you can have budgets take some actions on your behalf. And so maybe one thing you can do is if you go past the $100, you can apply a permission policy that blocks you out for the rest of the month, let's say, if you really wanted to stop it. We have a comment from Lil Hottie saying, to Ria, you have a great way of explaining everything. Thank you. So
thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, another note on cost is you could also use Cost Explorer. So if you want to see like your usage patterns, you can also go into Cost Explorer and see that. One note is that if you're in Cost Explorer, you're going to see your usage for Claude Code under the Bedrock service. Okay, so that is everything that I have on cost. The next thing that I wanted to show you guys is context. So if you do /context, this is going to be everything about your context window. So if you're not sure what a context window is, it's going to be everything that is passed along with your question to the model. And it's going to be all the context, which is going to be like your system prompt, your skills, your memory, all of that stuff. And this is actually a super cool way to see exactly how your context window is being used. So you can see that some of it is gone for your system prompt, some of it's going to be for your skills. And we're going to talk about like what skills are a bit later in this demo. And you can see that most of this space right now is free. And then we also have some stuff or some space that's reserved for our auto compact buffer. And this is going to become relevant as you start having like longer conversations and you start working more with Claude. So as you have more of that conversation history, it's going to start compressing it and summarizing it so that you have more free space. So as you continue working with this, you can see like how many tokens you've used, and you can see how that context window starts getting used up. Yeah, so that was something else that I wanted to quickly show before we moved on.
So folks, just if you're just tuning in now, Ria is walking us through how to configure Claude Code for the first time. We're doing it specifically on Amazon Bedrock, so that gives you some of the features of being in the AWS ecosystem. You get to monitor things with budgets. You get to look at your costs via Cost Explorer. You're able to provide IAM permissions and roles, and you can also maybe take advantage of the AWS free tier if this is your first account.
Yep. All right, so next up, we're going to be looking at our IDE extension. So remember how I said at the beginning of the episode that Claude Code is terminal native? So the majority of the stuff you're going to be doing with the terminal, but in case you really like that IDE experience, that is available on VS Code via an extension. So let's take a look at how you would set that up if you wanted to. And how you do that is within VS Code, you go to your left side panel and you go to extensions. And you just look up Claude Code for VS Code, right? And you can just install this and it will add the extension to your IDE. And then you can start using VS Code from the IDE.
We have one more other question.
Okay.
James is asking, can I use Claude only in terminal mode? If I have a chatbot application, can I call Claude as the model to answer questions?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I'm covering right now. So you can do it in the terminal or in the IDE, as you can see here. So what this looks like, so since I already have this installed, it's going to open up on the side here like this. So this might be something that you're familiar with. So you can just ask Claude questions this way. There is a slight difference, I would say. So if you're doing like more like intensive tasks, like maybe like a code refactor or like architecture type of stuff, you want to go with the terminal version because that's better suited for that. But there are some instances where you would actually prefer using the IDE version instead. So say, for example, you're working on like a single file and you're just doing like, code completions or like inline edits, it might actually be faster and easier to use the IDE version, actually. So you can kind of go with both. But the main thing is you want to make sure that the settings that you have for the terminal and the IDE are the same so that you have that consistency.
Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, so once you install this, you can go into your settings.json and you can add some extra configurations for setting up the IDE to also use Bedrock. You could also just even ask Claude. You could say, take a look at the settings that I have in my settings.json and accordingly set up the IDE to use the same models in the same region. So it can actually do it for you as well.
Another question. Just to chime in, I did a large refactor on IDE last week. How much faster would it be via terminal? I think that's a tough one for us to answer, right, Ria?
Yeah, I think it would just depend. But I do know that for more of those like intensive tasks, like a code refactor, obviously, I've heard that developers do prefer using the terminal because I think there's some slight differences there too. So
yeah, and I would also say like in terminal, typically like if you've got local files, then it can cat or grep through your logs, your local files, and kind of have like build the context a bit faster, rather than like maybe pausing and asking you for more information, things like that. So it just depends on what your experience was.
Yep, I agree with that. Okay, so next up, we're kind of going to switch gears a little bit, and we are going to talk about Claude.md files. So just as a quick visual for this, essentially a Claude.md file you can think of as having all of the context that you want to give to Claude. So Claude is going to be your coding assistant, and say you have some information that you would always like to have consistent. So say like, what coding language do I always like to use? What are some other conventions that I like? Or stuff that I want to keep the same among like different team members. Say there's different people working on a project, and I want everyone to follow those same like standards and conventions. The way that I would define this is with my Claude.md file. And this visual here is just to demonstrate that you can have the Claude.md file at different places in your project, right? So you can have one at like the main repo or the main project level. So this could be like overarching like architecture, what sort of like programming languages do I want to use, and that sort of thing. But you could also have other Claude.md files at different like submodules. So say for example, like in the front end, you specifically want everything within that project that's UI related to use React, for example, or there's like a component library that you want to use. So you would specify all of that within that Claude.md file. And then similarly for like backend, say for example, you have specific conventions for how you want to design your APIs, how your architecture needs to be. All of that can be covered within the Claude.md. And then you can also have your own personal Claude.md and your user. So these could be like your personal preferences. So say there's a specific way that you like Claude to answer your questions and interact with you. You can save all of that within your Claude.md file. And then every time that Claude interacts with you in the future, it's going to reference that and it's going to adhere to those standards. So let's jump back to our VS Code server. And we are actually going to create a Claude.md file. So I'm going to exit out of my Claude terminal, and we're going to create a file. So let me grab my command.
While you're doing that, we have another question from the chat saying, what's your favorite feature of Claude, I guess?
My favorite feature? I think my favorite feature is going to be the insights feature, which hopefully we have time to get to all the way at the end of this. But essentially, it gives you like a quick summary report of like how you're interacting with Claude. And then it also gives you like suggestions on like how you could improve and be better and be more efficient. So I think that's super
I like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
I haven't played around with that. Yeah, that's super cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get to it. We got about a half hour left.
Yep. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a file, which is going to be called Claude.md. And this is going to be at our workshop, like project root. So this is going to be like for everything within this project. And I'm going to add this configuration into our file. So let's take a look at what exactly we have within this Claude.md file. So these are going to be the conventions that I want to be followed for everything that we have within this project, right? So say, for example, like bash commands. So I have some specified out with what they do. I also have code style specified. So this is going to be things like use TypeScript, destructure imports when possible, always include error handling, that sort of thing. I also have some specifications that I want to follow for like workflow. So, when you're done making code changes, always type check it, write unit tests whenever you have new components or utilities, always update documentation, that sort of stuff. So you can define all of that within this file. You can also give it guidance on like how you want your repo to be structured, the different folders and things like that. You can also specify like your development server. So for this project, I want to always use port 3000. So it's another thing that I can specify within my Claude.md file. So I am going to save this. Okay. And then the next thing that we're going to take a look at is going to be commands. So whenever you have like repeated workflows, that's when you want to create custom commands for those. So if we think about this Claude.md file, this is like instructions for the project in general, but it's not for like a very specific task, right? So say, for example, you want to like add a new component to your application, and you have specific things that you want to do every time that you add a new component. So where would I put those instructions? And that's where you would want to create a custom command. So how we do this is also very simple. First off, I'm going to create a new folder, which is going to be called Claude Commands. And then I'm going to create a new MD file within there. So I'm going to call this new component. And when we look through what exactly is in here, I think this is going to make more sense. I'm also going to show you a couple different examples of different custom commands that you can add in. So this one is specifically for adding in a new component. So I'm going to say every time you add a new component, follow these steps, right? And this is going to be, create the component file within this specific folder. Use TypeScript, add error boundaries, have a test file, and update documentation, etc. And I also tell it at the bottom here to follow all of the team's coding standards from the Claude.md file. So the one that we created first, in addition to following all of these steps, also follow all of these. So even if I didn't explicitly put this in this file, it still should reference the Claude.md because it's within the project. But I explicitly want to say that as well, just to make sure that it is actually looking through that. So that is going to be my Claude.md file. So I'm going to save this.
We have one more question.
Okay.
This one I don't know what it's referencing. They're saying, does adding error boundaries not lead to excessive edge cases being added? Do you know what this means, Ria?
Are they referring to something specific, like within the file with the error boundaries? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. If you want to add a little bit more color. Oh, 0.4, sorry. 0.4. Oh, add error boundaries where appropriate. Oh.
Oh, well, this is just, it's an example of, things that, you could potentially do every time you add a new component. You could obviously, tweak this as you see fit. But yeah. So the next thing that we're going to be adding is going to be, I need to create the file first. So I'm going to create a new command for debugging an issue. So if you take a look at this one, it is it's giving instructions essentially for every time that you ask Claude to debug an issue. And you want to specify things that it should do, like a checklist similar to the other one. And this one's going to be like follow a systematic approach, read the error logs, identify the root cause, see if there's similar problems, reproduce the issue, fix it, and then update documentation. So going forward in this project, every time you run into some problem and then you ask Claude to help debug that, it's going to follow this checklist and go through all of these things so that you feel more confident that it's being more thorough and not actually missing anything. I'm going to do one more example of a command that you could set up. So I'm going to create a new file, which is going to be for reviewing a pull request. So say before you push your pull request to your repo and you want Claude to take a look at it. So it's going to check for like your code quality, make sure that all of your new code has like appropriate testing, look for any like vulnerabilities or performance issues, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to go through 3 examples just to show you like the different things that you could create these custom commands for. So if there's anything that you feel like you'll be doing multiple times within your project and you don't want to, each time that you do it, given this information, specifically with your prompt, you can always create these custom commands so that all of this is defined. Okay. Yeah. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is going to be verifying that all of this stuff that we set up is, actually there. So we're going to go back into our Claude terminal.
So now it's going to load all of those markdown files that you just created, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask it a very simple question. I'm going to say, what are the team's coding standards? And it's going to look at that claude.md file that we created here. So it's essentially going to tell you everything that's based on what we defined for it earlier. So going forward, every time that you're doing anything, it's always going to make sure to follow these guidelines that we gave it. Another thing that I want to point out here is if we go back to our settings.json that we had in the beginning, you can also define here like tools that you want to give permissions for. So say, for example, you have like GitHub CLI tools, or you want to have tools to like edit files. So if you've ever worked with like a coding assistant, before it makes any change, it's going to ask you first. It's going to be like, do you give me permission to use this tool? But if you don't want to do that every single time, you can actually define that within the settings.json file under like an approved tool. And you can list those out. And that means that every time, Claude needs to use that specific tool, it just has to go ahead and use that and doesn't need to ask your permission. But obviously when you do that, you want to be careful because it's kind of giving those like blanket permissions. So you want to be, smart when you, give those tool permissions. Like
Give
that.
it read permissions, guys.
Yeah.
Reprove all those rights, please.
Yep. Okay. The next thing that I had planned out to do was to create a game application. I'm not sure if we're going to go through the whole thing just because I have some other stuff that I really want to show too. But essentially, how this works is you could just give in a simple prompt. I'm actually going to copy this in. So I'm going to say I want to create a simple application with a 2048 game, and I want it to be built using React and TypeScript. And I want to place it in a specific folder, and that the development server port should be 3000. So this is like a very quick example of like how you would actually interact with Claude to build something. And like I said before, each thing that it wants to do, each step. So in the background, Claude is, creating a plan for how to tackle this, how to put this together. And in the end, it's just going to give you the link to the game that we've created. And as it goes through each of these tasks, it's going to ask for permission. It's going to tell you what it wants to do. And then you can give it permission individually at each command or instruction. Or you could also just say, allow all edits during this session. So you want to be careful when you're doing this, like in a real like production example. But here, for the sake of this demo, to move a little bit faster, I'm going to give it those permissions.
Also, to be clear, folks, this is in a demo environment as well, so we can be assured that we're not breaking anything by just letting it rip.
Yep. So while this is running, actually, I can show you something else. So it actually shows up here as a tip. So in the background, Claude is working on like creating our game for us, and that's going to take, a little bit of time to work through everything and build that out. But say while this is running, I had like a quick question that popped to mind. I can use / by the way, or BTW, and I can ask any question. So say, for example, while this is running, I forgot which dev server this is going to be running on. So I can say, what port is the game going to be running on? And it told me that it's port 3000, which, if you remember, is what we specified within our prompt. But the neat thing about this is that while we ask this like separate by the way question, it's not messing with like the main task that's running in the background. And the way that this works is also pretty cool. There's a couple things about this, by the way, like you can't have a multi-turn conversation. So say I had a follow-up to that, I wouldn't be able to ask that. I'd have to ask it as a separate question.
Because it won't save the context, right?
Yeah, it's just like a one-off. But another thing about this is that it's not able to like use any tools or do any searches. It's answering the question purely based off of like the session context. So everything that we've chatted with Claude with so far. But because of that, it's also going to be like much cheaper in terms of that actual inference because it's just working off of the prompt cache. So those are some things about the by the way feature.
So, folks, just if you're tuning in, we got about 20 minutes, a little less left. Ria's taking us through how to configure Claude Code for the first time on Amazon Bedrock. So we've broken down how to initialize it, how to set it up for the first time, how to create your markdown files so that Claude is tailored to your needs. And now we're working through building a game and testing out some of the other features while it is writing that code for us. Anything else you want to add, Ria?
No, I think that was a good summary.
Okay. And if you've got any questions about Claude Code or Amazon Bedrock, hit us up in the chat.
Yep. Okay, so let's give this just a little bit more time to see if it can come up with a game for us in the next maybe minute or so. Or else we can move on. We can assume that it created it properly, and then we can look at some of the other features. In case anyone was wondering, oh, actually, I think it has created it.
Yep, it's running on port 3000. Let's see if we can access it.
Yeah.
What kind of game is it?
It's a 2048 game.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
James Butler's asking, Bedrock, what's the story behind that name? Well, if you think foundation models, what's the foundation? And it's also the bedrock. I think that's my own assumption of how they came up with that name.
Let me try exiting out of this. So we're going to go into our game folder. And then let's see if this opens up. Okay.
Here we go.
So we have our game here. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so if I move around with my arrow keys, it has this 2048 game for us. So as you can see, Claude Code was able to create this so much quicker than we would have been able to as humans. And another neat thing about this is it was able to create this using all of the context and instructions that we gave it. So all of these kind of conventions, it followed all of those while it created this game. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show here, if you remember, we created some custom commands. So let's try using one of these, right? So let's try adding a new component to our game. So we are going to open Claude back up.
And if folks have any other suggestions, let us know. We might have time, maybe, to implement them.
Yep. So how we use our custom command, we can just do / and then the name of it. So as you can see, it already popped up here at the bottom. So let me actually grab my command here. I'm going to say I want to add a leaderboard button at the bottom of the page, and I want to display that leaderboard in a pop-up UI. So when it's going to go through and do this, it's going to follow these instructions that we have. It's going to go through this checklist, and it's also going to follow our team's coding standards from the claude.md file. And that is how it is going to add this new component. So let's see if it's able to create that for us.
Oh my god, Eerie Edits goes, well, it's official. I got old. What is the 2048 game? I have no idea what the point of the game is. Oh man, okay. I can explain this one. So the point is that you're in a grid, and when you bring the twos together, it becomes a four, and you're trying to bring it together to get to 2048. So like every time you bring the tools to get the two together, it doubles. So right now she's stuck that 8 needs another 8 to become a 16, and so on and so forth. So there's a ton of these games in the App Store. My favorite one is the original one, which is called Threes. Check it out. Oh, James also we're talking about it, but they even have this on planes now. So if, I think like on Delta flights, this shows up as a game. So it's pretty much everywhere. But check it out. You're not old. Sorry, Ria, go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, so essentially once it goes through all of this, it's going to add that new component to our game page. And the main thing I wanted to show here is that, you can use that custom command that you created before, and it's super simple to invoke it. You can just do / with the name of that, and it's going to make those changes. So we can let that run while we talk about the next thing that I wanted to cover, which is going to be agent skills.
Which is the thing I'm most excited about to hear you talk about, because
Yeah.
everyone tells me that Kiro powers are different than Claude's skills, and I'm like, okay, I need to know more.
Yeah. So what we have here is a skill. And essentially a skill is going to be like a organized directory, which is going to have a skill.md file along with any other like scripts or like references or anything that is related to that. And this is going to be like your specialized domain knowledge, right? So say, for example, you want to work on like a very specialized task. You can put everything into this folder with the skill.md file, and you can also package that up and reuse it across like different teams and different projects. So it makes it super simple to do like very specific domain knowledge things. You don't have to like keep giving that context every time you need that. And the way that a skill looks is like this. This is going to be the structure of it. So you're going to have some metadata in the beginning, which is going to have the name of the skill along with a very quick description. And then following that, we're going to have the actual markdown, which is going to be the actual content of the skill. So the neat thing about this is that when Claude is, going through all the skills that it has available to it, it's only going to look at this metadata. It's going to look at the name and the description, and it's going to determine if this is something that it feels is useful for the task that it's trying to do. If it is, then it's going to continue and read on for the rest of it, like the markdown. But if it thinks that this skill isn't really relevant to what it's trying to do, it's just going to skip ahead to the next one. So you can also save on some of those like input tokens and context too when you use that skill.
James asks, is it like a RAG? I would say it's different than a RAG because it's not pulling like it's pulling the information on how to do something rather than pulling information about something.
Yeah.
I'm probably not explaining it the best.
No, that makes sense. Like with RAG, this one's more targeted, I would say. So it's very specific on like the skill file is going to have like all the information that you need. And if there's like any references or any examples, something like that, you can all have that within this folder. Whereas a RAG is more for like a knowledge base with like much more information. So it's intended for like a different volume of data, I would say. So here we're actually going to create our own skill. And I think that is going to help us understand what this is a little bit more. So let's see if this is going to run up here in the back. Actually, we can open up a new terminal while we work on the skill. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is create a new folder. And we're going to go into that. And the skill that we want to create today is going to be like a custom branding skill. So say, for example, I want to create like PowerPoint decks or like PDFs, and I always want to have the same consistent like formatting, color scheme, that sort of thing. So I'm going to create a custom skill for my branding, which is going to be like my color scheme and everything like that. And I'm going to put that within the skill. So I am going to create a skills directory structure within this folder that we just created. And then I'm going to create a skill.md file inside there. So within the skill.md file, I'm going to have the following content. So I'm going to save this. Then we can take a look at this super quickly. So as you can see here, up here we have the metadata, which is going to be applying brand guidelines is going to be the name of my skill. And I'm going to say that this is for applying, consistent corporate branding and styling to anything that I generate. And essentially what's going to be in there is going to be like the color palette that I want to follow, like what fonts do I want, logos, things like that. And it's also going to have some specific standards for different types of files like PowerPoints or Excel or PDF, etc. So that's essentially what I have described within my skill.md file. And essentially what I'm going to do next is I'm going to ask Claude to help me create some helper functions for actually applying these, the branding. So I'm going to tell Claude, based on this skill.md that I create 2 Python helper scripts. And one is going to actually apply the brand.py, or apply the brand, and then the second one is going to validate that. So based on this, it's going to, create 2 Python functions that are going to help me, actually use this skill. So if you look in here, you can see our skill.md. So once I have created these, then I'm going to actually ask it to create a PowerPoint deck for me. So let's see if it's able to do this. Okay.
Yes, we're going to allow it to build it. It's funny, folks in the chat. Have you been using AI to build your PowerPoints, or are you defaulting like to HTML files like the rest of us?
I feel like AI can actually create like really good HTML dashboards. The only thing that sucks about them is that they're not like real time with the data. It's more of like a point in time snapshot. But they create some pretty good dashboards and material, I found.
Yeah, I agree. Like the HTML standard, like it's all code, so then it's easier as opposed to the PowerPoint makes it harder to edit. Your edit says, I know it isn't, but sometimes this stuff seems like magic. And James Butler is asking, can I follow these later? Yeah, let me get you the workshop link so we can share with our team. Hold on. I'll do that in the background while you're working.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially what I did, it created those helper Python functions for us. And then I essentially just gave it a very simple prompt. I said I want a 3-slide PowerPoint presentation of the 2048 game that we created, and I want to follow the brand guidelines. I gave a quick description of what I want those slides to be. And I also specifically said that I want to apply the brand guidelines skill. So after creating the presentation, we also want to open it so that we can review this. So it's going to be working on creating this PowerPoint for us. And just to, I guess, kind of speed things along, I ran this a short while before, so I have an example output of what that deck looks like. So I can just quickly pull that up and show you.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes already. This thing has gone really fast. But look at this. It even has an Amazon logo in there.
Yeah, so it obviously needs a little bit of work, but it did follow like the color scheme and some of those guidelines that we gave it. So this is an example output of what that skill was able to help us generate. Okay, and I think the last thing that I'm going to talk about is going to be insights, just because I kind of teased a little bit about it earlier, and I don't want to not cover that.
Yeah, please.
So I'm going to open up a new terminal here, and I'm going to open up Claude. And it's very simple to do insights. You can just do /insights. And what it's going to do is, based on like all of our interactions that we've had with Claude Code so far, it's going to create an HTML report of how we've interacted with it, and how to best pull this up. So I've also generated this. So I'm going to pull this to my screen. Okay, so this is an example of what you might get if you run that insights. So it takes about a minute or two, so I just have this pre-run. And essentially it gives you like an at a glance of like, what's working, what's hindering you, and things you can do. It also gives you a summary of like how many messages you've had with Claude, how many lines you've added over like how many days, how many files.
And then you just submit this straight to your manager.
Yeah, so I think a good point in which to run this report is going to be like after you finish like working on a sprint, or working on a project. It gives you like a very detailed overview of exactly what you've added in, like what tools you use, what languages, things like that. So it also gives you a summary of how you use Claude Code, how you interact with it. It might also give you some suggestions for how you could improve moving forward. And it has some of that information that can help you, kind of be more effective going forward. So it can tell you where things might have not gone so well, and help you understand so that you can address those going forward. It also gives you these very simple commands that you can to Claude, to also help you improve your future interactions with it.
I like this a lot because if you're playing around with it the first time, you're like, okay, I've used these things, and then it's like, hey, cool, now here's other things to try out. It's basically giving you your own tutorial.
Yeah. It's a pretty thorough report. It's quite long. So I definitely recommend running this on your own. You don't even need to do too much with Claude before you run this. Obviously, it would be more insightful if you've, worked with it quite a bit. But this is a good way to understand the different features and also explore different things like hooks and stuff when you read through these suggestions.
And then, folks, most of this stuff, again, if you want to get started with Claude, we put the link to this workshop in the chat so you can check it out yourself. Again, you can also try to use Claude Code directly, but I recommend, especially if you already are building on AWS, to use Claude Code through Bedrock, and then that way you get a bit more flexibility and get to use some of the existing security permissions and monitoring that you already have in place today.
Yep.
Ria, any parting thoughts? We got about a minute left.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the component that we added, the leaderboard, has finally added in. So this wasn't there in our original version. This was something that we added as a new component. So that has also come into our webpage, which is cool.
I love doing these demos live because then we're just it's coding itself in the background while we're working. So folks, as we near the end of the episode, I want to thank Ria for coming on stage and subbing in for Zamara as our co-host. And most of you that have been on and seen a prior episode know Zamara, and I want to thank her. This is our last episode of the season, so you will not see us next week. Sorry, our regular viewers, such as Erie Edits and maybe Borghetti, who wasn't here today. But yeah, we will not be back, but you can check on the latest AWS Tech Tales news by going to awstechtails.com. You'll see I've updated our show page. We've got this episode here today, and then all of our episodes, all 21 of them from this season, from this year, up on the board, so you can check those out. And then we'll put any new updates on awstechtails.com as we see them. So thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And thanks again, Ria, for coming on and showing us a bit of Claude Code.
Yeah, of course. I hope you all have a good time exploring Claude Code. Thank you.
Oh, Brigitti's here. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you sometime soon.